Mayday here. 82, we have smoke in the cabin. Contact, how to maintain.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the January 2025 transmission of Galactic Terrors, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I am Jim Chambers, and tonight we have three outstanding readers ready to share their stories with you. ELAINE PASCALE, MARC L ABBOTT, and Matthew KRESSEL. And joining me, of course, is my wonderful co-host, Carol Gyzander.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the new year. Jim and I were just chatting a few minutes ago that this is the first show of our 6th year doing Galactic Terrors, and I don't know where the time has gone.
It's funny. I was just thinking that when we did the Galactic Terrors last month, we were all sitting around saying, oh my God, how is it December already? And here we are. It's 2025 now. So yes, I hope 2025 is treating everyone well so far. And best wishes from Galactic Terror for an awesome new year.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
So we certainly have some great readings and programs in the works for you all. And if you want to make sure to keep up to date with our schedule and what's coming up, you can click subscribe below on YouTube to follow future Galactic Terrors transmissions. We are going to be going live every second Thursday of the month, but we do have some surprises coming up that you'll want to be watching out for. And the best way to find out about those is our awesome newsletter, which we do not spam you with. We will send you once, twice, maybe 3 times, since we've got some special shenanigans coming up, but you will not get flooded with Galactic Terrors emails if you want to keep apprised of what we have in the works.
Mm-hmm. We'd rather play hard to get with your mailbox. So,
Carol, how are you doing so far this year?
Good. I'm a little confused. You know, when some of the holidays fall in the middle of the week, you have just multiple Mondays of every week, don't you? You know, so we've got one full week going so far, so that's good. I think it's Thursday, right? It's Thursday?
It's the second Thursday of the month.
Cool. Oh, that's why we're here.
I know that because it's time for Galactic Terrors.
Awesome. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's already the beginning of another year of conventions and things coming up, though. And, you know, we have a couple exciting new things to mention. Yeah. The Eresia convention is coming up in Boston. That's like from January 17th to the 20th. And they have a new focus on horror, a whole an additional track specifically on horror programming, which is going to be very cool.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Are you going to Eresia?
Yes, I am. I get to do a couple panels and things like that. And also the Broad Universe group has a sales table. We all take turns selling books at the table, which makes life ever so much easier than being pinned to a table for the entire convention. So that's fun.
That's great. I have never made it to Eresia, but I have heard it's a great convention. So one of these years I'll have to check it out, especially now if they're doing more horror programming.
Stuff. Yeah, cool. And then there's something else coming up in Long Island, yes?
There is, the very first Long Island Convention of Horror, aka LITCH. That acronym was purely coincidental, I'm sure. They didn't try to come up with something cool for LITCH. But that's taking place in Hauppauge at, I don't remember the hotel. I'll have to check that out. But it's February 28th to March 1st, and you can find out about it online, just searching Long Island Convention of Horror. And a lot of our HWA New York chapter members who are local to the Long Island, New York City, Northern New Jersey area are going to be attending and participating in panels and presentations and other fun stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and there's some great people that are putting it together, folks we've known and worked with before. So that's
one
great.
of whom is Charles Baruch. Charles,
yes,
thank you for the
indeed.
URL. He has very timely, in timely fashion, provided us with a website for Lich, the Long Island Horror Con.
Excellent timing. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, we have coming up a few months down the road in Stamford, Connecticut, StokerCon 2025, the HWA's annual convention, which is a fantastic event. If you're a horror writer and you haven't attended StokerCon yet, I certainly recommend checking it out. And we'll be presenting the 2024 Bram Stoker Awards there, offering writing workshops and all sorts of good stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so many friendly people. Yeah.
Yes. And a terrific lineup of guests: Adam Neville, Tim Wagoner, Gabby Triana, Paula Garan, Joyce Carol Oates, and I can never remember all of them.
It's like when you go to the store to get something, you come out with everything except that one thing. Yes.
And Scott Edelman. That's it. I knew I would get it.
That's it. Yeah. Cool. No, that's fun. That's my favorite convention of all of them. So looking forward to that. And
Awesome.
from us in New York City area, it's like an hour away. So that's not bad.
It's an easy trip. Had to visit the hotel there last month, and it's literally two right turns off the highway if you're going the same way I did, and an easy walk from the train station. So if you're in the New York City area, you can hop on a train, get off in Stamford, and walk right on over.
And you said the hotel is set up with a lot of open space and room to hang out and chat and network and such. So that to me sounds really wonderful. Something to go forward to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great space. So hopefully
Cool.
We'll see some of our Galactic Terrors friends and audience there.
Yay! I hope so.
And
Yeah.
before we jump into the readings, I'm sorry, Nicholas, I've got to do it. I'm telling Carol. Nicholas is multitasking.
What's he doing? He's doing his taxes.
Don't tell Carol I am multitasking. Well, I'm a cattle. I have to tell her, Nicholas. Sorry.
Okay, you can do that during Galactic Terrors as long as you come over and do my taxes afterwards. So that'd be fine. Yeah.
That's it.
Cool. Well, what do you say though? Should we get into some wonderful words from writers?
Absolutely.
See what I did there? Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's go. So our first reader tonight is ELAINE PASCALE. ELAINE is the author of The Bloodlights. If nothing else, Eve, we've enjoyed the fruit, The Kitchen Witches, The Language of Crows, and the soon-to-be-released The Solstice. She's the co-editor of Dancing in the Shadows, a tribute to Anne Rice. She is a regular contributor to Pen of the Damned and the Ladies of Horror Picture Prompt Challenge, and an active member of the HWA. ELAINE enjoys chocolate, a robust full moon, reading spam emails, and paddleboarding. Find out more about ELAINE at ELAINEPASCALE.com. All right. Welcome, ELAINE.
Hi, everyone. As you can see from that lovely thumbnail, I am reading from the recently released collection of stories called The Language of Crows. It was released in August by Dark Ink Press. I'll be reading a story called The Will. There is a cool crispness that hangs about the valley in the fall, cold enough to see your breath and put a crunch beneath your boots, but not cold enough to bring any snow. The falls are brown. The trees that line the mountains on either side of the valley are naked and deformed. Their mangled bodies tangle together to form boundaries on dirt roads, boundaries that warn God-fearing men to stick to their paths. The valley has a distinct smell that appears in mid-October and lasts until December. It's the smell of harvest and smoking guns. The guns belong to the hunters who spend the greater part of the season ambushing deer. Even these burly men, clothed in fluorescent orange, punctuating their sentences with spits of tobacco, even these men don't wander too far from the paths. The mountains join like two huge hands that cradle the valley. The elevated arms that anchor those hands are basically unexplored and vastly uninhabited. Few people have wandered into the untamed woods, and even fewer have wandered out. On exceptionally languid days, hikers may take to the paths, observing the colorful leaves, smelling the clean air, and enjoying the last comfortable days before winter strikes. Those hikers might become curious about the woods beyond the paths. They may even entertain walking the unmarked land for a bit. But then someone thinks of the goat man, and all freewheeling ideas are shelved. Some say the goat man is 120 years old. Others say he's 60. Some say, in a valley where kissing cousins do more than kiss, that his defect is the result of careless inbreeding. Others say he's the spawn of the devil or the sign of the apocalypse. Some say the goat man can stun a person by looking in his eyes. Some say his tears are poison. In a valley filled to the top of its mountains with superstition, Callie Baker doesn't say anything at all. It's not because she doesn't want to chime in about the goat man or about the particular shade of blue sky that hangs over afternoon football games in October, or about the taste of peach pie when cinnamon is ground on top. Callie would love the opportunity to sound off on any of these topics, but there's no sound issuing from her throat. There never has been. Callie's mother bragged to all of her friends that her baby slept through the night and never so much as uttered a peep during the day. The truth was that Callie wailed all day long and throughout the night. She wailed at the top of her lungs, but that is exactly where the sound ended, her lungs. Callie's mother was not the most intuitive woman, nor the brightest. It took months for her to understand that her girl was mute, even though the hospital had recorded the fact at birth. The pediatrician had recommended a specialist outside of the valley who was researching frontal lobe stimulation. The family's general practitioner claimed it was a vocal cord issue and recommended a different specialist on the other side of the mountains. Callie's mother was not very intuitive nor very bright, but she was stubborn in what she knew. And what she knew was that man should not interfere with God's plan. Furthermore, she knew that men preferred women who did not spout off. She would remind Callie that the most dangerous monster is a silent, smiling woman. Thus, Callie lived a life of productive silence. Cruelly, her receptive auditory organs functioned above the 100th percentile. Her ears could pick up sounds, mostly those she did not want to hear, from very far away. The very worst sounds were amplified as if speakers rested in her ear canals. Some horrible sounds, such as her great uncle slurping down his coffee, were almost painful. The very worst sounds of all were those made by her neighbor's parrots. They were two large blue and green birds that spent their entire lives on the screened-in porch attached to the trailer beside Callie's home. They mocked her daily, calling to her when she set foot outside her front door or went on to her back porch. "Happy birthday," they would trill when she retrieved her mail or newspaper. "Happy birthday," they would tweet when she went to her car. Even though their speech was mindless repetition, it was more than she could produce, and therefore a stab wound each time their beaks parted. Callie fantasized that she was like the goat man, that her defect was visibly disturbing enough that she was avoided entirely. She also fantasized about silencing the demented birds permanently. Her home was canopied by large maple trees and gigantic dark pines. The maples changed colors and burned with an autumn fire, while the pines were very dark, like an empty house or a soundless throat. Callie's mother had loved the pines. They reminded her of when her daddy had taken her for long drives into the mountains. Callie's grandfather had told his little girl the story of the babes in the woods, the story that accompanied the small stone and cross that were tucked deep into the heart of the mountain pines. The babes were little girls who had been killed and buried by their father when he could no longer afford to feed them. They'd been taken into the woods when their hunger cries had become too much to bear. Callie's mother told this story as a cautionary tale of what happened to girls who could not keep quiet. She attempted to use the story as an inoculation against all that the neighbors said about Callie's muteness. Some said it was a curse because there had been witchcraft in the Baker family history. Others said that Callie was keeping the secrets of the devil. Callie's father had promised to cut down the pines to let the sun hit their house. He had gone into the shed to get the chainsaw and had disappeared. The monotonous parrots had served as the only witnesses. Edgar Wishart steered his tractor along the gravelly shoulder of Clay Hill Road. He balanced a steaming cup of Plotz's coffee in one hand while commandeering his vehicle with the other. This entire stretch of road belonged to him and him alone. No one knew that fact just yet. And when he died, they would see a non-traditional type of will that prevented anyone he disliked from laying claim. And he disliked nearly everyone. And no one, not even my kin, will lay a finger on my fortune, he mused as he pulled his tractor into the pine-shaded driveway of Callie Baker. Happy birthday, a parrot said, followed by the same sentiment uttered by the other. Rotten hell, Wishart tossed back, not believing that animals experienced any kind of an afterlife, but wishing it just in case. He rang the bell and waited patiently, knowing that his grandniece was home, but did not have the ability to call out, "Coming," as everyone else in the valley did. Since her parents had passed away, she had kept to herself in their home, doing odd jobs here and there for Wishart. He was recently investigating how difficult it would be to take that house out from under her. Unlike his will, the Bakers had left much to be desired in terms of locking down rightful inheritance. Callie opened the door and gestured for Wishart to enter. Wishart plopped some bills of a variety of denominations, some eggs, and a group of cleaned squirrel carcasses on Callie's table. "You done good," he said with as much encouragement as he could muster. Callie was the perfect lackey for all the dirty business that Wishart need taken care of. She would never blab, and most of the valley was used to seeing her sulking about. Any weird behavior was simply chalked up to Callie being Callie. In a way, she was the perfect woman. He sometimes wondered why she was perpetually single. Then again, a husband would claim that house, and Wishart had eyes on it. "So good," the man continued, "that I have another task for you. This one's kind of big, but I'm willing to pay for it." Surprising the old man, she reached for a notepad and wrote, "This is the last one." "I used to like that you never sassed back." Wishart paused to slurp his coffee. The sound went through Callie as if a million bugs were crawling around beneath her skin. Callie wrote another sentence. "I want something else in addition to the money and squirrels." Wishart arched an eyebrow at the girl over his coffee, which went down his throat raucously. "The birds," she wrote. "I want them killed." Wishart nodded. "Consider it done." Callie shook her head and scribbled on the notepad, "That chicken?" "Yes, I botched that one, but it was divine providence in the end." Wishart was referring to Roscoe, the rooster he had beheaded that refused to die. Roscoe lived without a head for 18 months. Those 18 months had been full of county fair visits far beyond the mountains, at which Wishart charged $1 a head for gawkers to witness real, live, headless poultry. Some thought the rooster was in partnership with the devil. Others thought he was the sign of the apocalypse. "It's a chicken that's led me to this point," the old man smiled wistfully. "I made enough money off that chicken to coast for a long while. Imagine what I could bring in with something else, something better." Callie nodded, but Wishart knew that Callie could not truly understand the plan. No one could. The mornings were bringing new aches to his bones, and it was becoming more and more difficult to climb out of bed. One day, most likely soon, he would just remain in bed. Then his will would be found, and all hell would break loose. If only he could guarantee himself a ringside seat, but he wasn't so sure that people experience an afterlife either. After the deal was made, and Callie was clear on her part of the plan, she coaxed Wishart out of her house to give her ears a rest. Then she took some squirrel carcasses to the back of the house. She entered the shed, the very same one her father had disappeared into a decade earlier. The inside of the shed had a peculiar smell, like the rendering plant that Callie's class had visited when it had been deemed appropriate to teach them where food for pets comes from. Being a farm community, the lesson was not as transformative as it could have been, but the smell stayed with her, and Callie had a sensory memory of that field trip every time she opened the shed door. As always, she entered the shed with animal carcasses and exited with none, holding her ears to block the horrendous sounds. And I'm going to stop there. You can read the rest in the book, The Language of Crows.
Elaine, what's in the shed? Okay, you got me. You got me. I have the book, and I've been like looking at it piggledy, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, I love the idea. What is it about birds and crows that got you all excited about these stories?
It was more about, not so much about crows, although the main story, the first story, is called The Language of Crows.
Yeah.
The book itself conceptually is more about stories where people lose a voice or don't have a voice. Like Callie is
Okay.
mute.
Yeah.
In other stories, we have people who maybe have difficulty articulating what they're trying to say, or second language issues, or, they're women in a world where women are not listened to. So that's
Okay.
sort of the theme
So it's
going
more the
through.
language. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know crows are clever and crows are smart, and people who cannot communicate also are the same, but they just can't tell us that. So,
Exactly.
wow. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very cool. How long have you been working on those stories? Are these different ones that you had written over the years and you've put together and added, or how did you?
Yes, they are. Half of the book has stories that were published elsewhere
Mhm.
previously, and
Yeah.
then the other. So there's like 16 stories. 8 were previously published in other anthologies. 8 are new. The Will that I just read is one of the ones that is a new story.
Mhm.
So yeah, they've sort of been piecemeal here and there through the years.
Yes, yes. And I love what you say, dark fairy tales, historical horror, and psychological horrors. So it's got a wonderful creep factor to it, So
Thank you.
yeah, that's awesome. That's fun. So I also remember when we came on your show, we had a lot of fun, the folks from my anthology, and that was great. But the Godmother of Horror, tell us a little bit about your other show that you do.
So I do have a YouTube channel
Mhm.
where I do several things. Sometimes I have, as I had you on, I have authors on doing readings, which is always a lot of fun, diverse authors from all different ends of the horror spectrum. I also am the voice actress for the Ladies of Horror. So every month we write stories and poems, and I also write. But then I read everybody's reading, and that's published there. And then once a month, I do some sort of top 10 horror movie review, because I am a horror film fanatic. That's all I do is watch horror movies.
Okay.
I watch nothing else. So people be like, "Oh, did you see that new rom-com?" I'm like, "No." Nor would I, no.
That's funny, unless there's a chainsaw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, rom-coms with chainsaws, that could work. Yeah. In those genres. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to see that anthology coming out. That's really fun. How did you get started in writing?
Oh, I've been writing forever. I've been writing. I can remember when I was little, like begging my parents to teach me to write before I went to school, because I was like, I have stories I want to put down. So I just always have. My grandmother really encouraged me. She used to read Edgar Allan Poe as my bedtime stories. So I think that's what got me really interested in horror. And I've always loved it. And so yeah, you said, rom-coms with chainsaws. I don't know that I could write the rom-com part. It's like when you squeeze peppermint toothpaste, peppermint comes out, not cinnamon. When you squeeze me, horror comes out. That's it.
That's funny. That's funny. We just got to check the label before we go.
Yeah, before you squeeze.
Yeah. Oh, that's really fun. Well, we have another question from somebody in our audience. Nicholas Dyack asks, what was the genesis of Dancing in the Shadows? How did the project come about? And what influence has Anne Rice had on you when you're writing?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Well, I mean, the genesis was her passing. We felt bereft. We felt it when she passed. And the project actually came about the day the day she passed. We said, we need to do something. We can't just let this go. So Rebecca Rowland and I co-edited, and Angela Eureka Smith was doing the publishing. Her Eureka Smith Publishing was the one who published it. And we got some other writers who have sort of a Gothic sensibility, and also felt connection to Anne Rice. One particular author, his husband had an incident in New Orleans. A crime was committed against him, and Anne Rice herself put in money to try to find the criminals who hurt him, and called them on the phone to make sure he was okay. So there was like a real like connection to Anne Rice. And I think many of us, I mean, I was very young when Interview with the Vampire. Well, I probably wasn't that young. I'm probably lying and trying to make myself. Come on, I'm very, very old. Let's not kid ourselves. But you know, when Interview with the Vampire came out, that ignited this whole new interest in Gothic literature. And I've always been a fan of the old time Gothic literature. So that's sort of what Anne Rice meant to me. It was sort of, you know, I realized through her, oh, we could bring that into the modern day and still be very successful with it.
And I love that Gothic is getting I don't know if resurgence is true, but you know, the Stoker award-winning novel was Krista Carmen with the Block Island story, which is a nice Gothic story. So,
and we just had the re-release of Nosferatu over Christmas.
Yes, you know? I have not seen it yet. Did you see it?
I have. I enjoyed it. It.
Even with mustache.
I did have a problem with, but I love Bill Skarsgård. He's my favorite Skarsgård, so he can kind of do no wrong for me.
Okay, that's all fair. That's fair. Cool. Well, I loved a couple things from the story that you were reading. You know, the slurping. Oh my God, it made me like just crawl. You know, listening to the slurping sound of somebody was amazing. And you know, the guy was charging $1 a head for unheaded chickens. It's just so ironic. You know, so well. And we had another comment from Kathleen Marshall, who says that the reading is fantastic. I have to find out what or who is in the shed.
Yeah, meal.
That's fun. That's fun. Do you like stringing along people and holding the suspense when you write your stories? Is that
of course?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. What would be the point of horror if you didn't create tension and you know, mystique and suspense? That's all part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and just torture us a little. You know, what the heck? Yeah. Oh, that's really fun. Well, listen, I've enjoyed chatting with you so much. What we'd love to do is get our next reader on and have you come back at the end and talk about some things coming up.
Absolutely.
Okay. That'll be terrific. Thanks so much, Elaine. Cool. Coming up next is MARC L Abbott, who is a Brooklyn native horror author. He's the author of Hell at Brooklyn Tea and the 2-time African-American literary award-winning horror anthology Hell at the Way Station. His horror short stories are featured in the anthologies Blackened Roots, A Woman Unbecoming, Soul Scream, Even in the Grave, and the Bram Stoker-nominated horror anthologies New York State of Fright and Under Twin Suns, Alternate Histories of the Yellow Sign. His new horror novel, Sinister Ascension, from Mocha Memoirs Press, is out now. He's a 2015 Moth Story Slam and Grand Slam Storyteller winner and an award-winning actor. When he's not curating workshops for the Center for Fiction, he teaches writing to students at Izquierdo Health and Science Charter School. Find out more about him at whoismarklabbott.com. Mark?
Hi, everyone. I will be reading from Sinister Ascension. This segment that I'm reading from happens a little way into the book, and it deals with a vampire named Todd Anderson, who has come to a college looking for a host for a very, shall we say, sinister spell that he's working on. I can get into it more after, but I want to get into this piece right here. This will be from chapter 16 in the book. Cy Taylor placed a closed fist up to his mouth and yawned into it. His eyelids grew heavy. He turned the heat off and cracked the window of the semi-cab, allowing the chilling night air in. He had been on the road for 7 hours, minus the hour he took to stop, eat, and let his food digest, hauling bathroom fixtures. He thought he could make it through the night into Virginia, but fatigue had crept up on him. After a decade of doing long hauls, he knew to listen to his body. Slightly invigorated by the air, he glanced over at his cup holder and noticed he still had some soda left in it. He retrieved it, unscrewed the top with his teeth, spat it onto the floor, and drank down the last of the dark, warm liquid, belched, then tossed the bottle into the back of the cab. He saw the exit sign for Bruckner coming up and thought, I could just pull into one of the gas stations and rest. The owner wouldn't mind. But by the time he had finished talking himself into it, he had driven past the exit ramp. Oh well, let's see how much more I have in the tank. He drove another 1.5 miles and didn't realize that he had fallen asleep until the truck drifted onto the shoulder and shook as it kicked up gravel. He straightened up, shook his head, and said, nope, not going to make it. He glanced out the right side of the cab, saw that the shoulder was flat, not a ditch, with enough room for him to pull off the road and park. By law, he could park 10 feet from the blacktop and rest, but only for a limited amount of time. Cy drove the semi off the road and onto the dead grass. He put the truck in park, turned the ignition off, and retrieved a reflective caution triangle from the back seat. He exited the cab and walked to the rear of the truck. There were a few cars passing, but he wanted to be sure someone coming off the road, they would see the caution triangle. The second he placed it onto the ground, the lights of a car fell upon him. The throaty sound of a Mustang filled the air. Cy stood erect as the driver got out. A young black man stepped into the light between them. You okay? Todd asked. I saw you pull over. I'm fine. Just need to take a break. Todd looked over at the truck. What you hauling? Fixtures. Long haul? Pretty much. Hey, thanks for your concern. I'm good though. Okay. Todd started back to his car. He stopped abruptly and turned aside. You travel this road a lot? Cy folded his arms. What business is it of yours? Todd put up his hands. Hey, I was just going to say, watch out for troopers or police. Don't want you to get harassed. I'll be fine. Todd continued back to his car. He revved the engine and peeled off into the blacktop. Cy glanced at his watch and thought, I could do a 30-minute nap. And he looked at the highway and saw a few cars go by. And they didn't notice him. I'll make it an hour. He walked to the back of the cab, climbed back in, and locked the door. In the rear of the cab, Cy had a makeshift bedroom, a cot to sleep on, a small solid nightstand, and on the floor next to his sleeping wares, he kept a tire iron in case he got into a situation requiring the use of a weapon. Atop the nightstand sat an old-fashioned wind-up alarm clock, the kind with the bells on top. Being a deep sleeper, its loud ring was sufficient for waking him. He set the alarm to go off for 1 hour before he lay down onto the cot and drifted off to sleep. 20 minutes into his nap, someone, banging hard on his door, woke him. Groggy and aggravated, he slid off the cot, made his way to the door, and glanced out the window. No one was there. So he decided to unlock the door, open it, and peer out. A passing car's headlights illuminated the area, so I expected to see the police or state trooper cruiser, but there was no one. And the same loud banging happened again, this time from the passenger side. Cy looked over his shoulder at the door. The banging stopped, but started up once more. Oh, someone wants to play games. He slipped back into the cab, retrieved the tire iron, and exited the truck on the driver's side. He crept around to the front of the truck and paused at the corner of the grill. He counted to 3 before rushing around the corner, the tire iron raised above his shoulders. There was no one there. Cy knelt to peer under the trailer. He moved back to the driver's side and knelt. Seeing no one, He climbed back into the cab, and after closing the door behind him, he turned toward the back and put the tire iron away. He froze. In the darkness, he could make out the silhouette of someone crouched down near his cot. The sounds of bone cracking and the snapping filled the interior of the person's head as the person's head jerked from side to side. Hey! The intruder stopped moving. They let out a series of guttural grunts before bleating like a goat. 2 glowing red eyes appeared in the dark. Cy opened the door and rushed out. He ran to the front of the truck, turning, and he raised the tire iron again. The intruder was already out of the cab and running toward him. Its contorted face, a cross between human and goat, let out a demonic bleat. It crouched seconds before it leapt at him. Cy swung, and the intruder caught his arm. And as he brought it to him, brought him to the cold ground. Its icy fingertips clutched his throat, and it squeezed an extended arm with the tire iron. It pried Cy's hand open, and the intruder punched him in the face before standing, taking a hold of his collar and dragging him to the passenger side of the truck. Get off me! Let me go! The intruder tightened their grip as they continued to haul him back to the end of the trailer. And Cy tried to plant his heels into the ground to stop himself from moving, but it did no good. As they passed the rear of the truck, he saw the front end of the Mustang that had stopped earlier. Help! Can somebody help me? The intruder stopped, let go of his collar, and straddled him. Their face contorted and morphed back to a human face. His red glowing eyes shimmered as he smiled at him, exposing fang-like canines. He struck like a snake and bit Cy in the neck. His nerves burned as his body seized up. Within seconds, he was paralyzed. Cy heard the car trunk open. He was lifted off the ground and placed into the trunk. The smell of decomposition hung heavy in the air around him, and Cy heard his kidnapper moving around down by his feet, creeping his way up to his head. His face came into view. The man held up something in front of Cy's eyes, resembling a large worm. He placed it on his head. He showed him another one, took hold of Cy's jaw and cheeks, squeezed and shoved it into his mouth. Cy could feel it squirm as it lodged in his throat. An open bag of soil began pouring over his face, and that would be the last thing he saw before he blacked out. Thank you. Pick up the book, Sinister Ascension.
Mark, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That is truly gruesome. Very chilling place to leave us hanging. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Sinister Ascension is, superficially a vampire novel, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I commented, it was a couple of years ago, I just happened to be commenting online about, excuse me if I sound like I'm going hoarse. Sorry, it's just so dry this time of year. About one of the blessings and curses of being a writer and part of a writing community is having read really great stuff that hasn't been published yet, and waiting for it to see print. And I think right around the time I posted that, within a few months, both you and another author I know announced that they'd found a home for their work that had been, sort of stuck behind the scenes. So tell us, just give us a little bit of the backstory on Sinister Ascension and its path to publication, because I find it fascinating, and I think some of the audience members will too.
Interestingly enough, Sinister Ascension actually came about as a short screenplay that I did in college many years ago, back in 93, 94. And as I began my writing career, I loved the story so much. The story originally was a kind of a love story with a vampire kind of thrown in. And when I decided I was going to put this into book form, I knew I needed a whole lot more than what I had. So the characters the overall story really started to change as I started to find the characters I wanted to play what roles. Interestingly enough, the couple in the story, who was the focus of the original screenplay, now take a back seat to a character who actually was a secondary character. She was supposed to be a random roommate, but for whatever reason, she pushed her way to the front and said, no, the story's about me. You have to change everything. And I listened to her. So 2013, I put this particular piece. I had finished the novel. I had gone to Vermont for a weekend at a writer's retreat. I ended up being part of like a competition for the book, and it came in third. And it was at that point I was like, this book really needs something. I'm not sure what. And it went through heavy rewrites over the course of from 2013 to almost 2023, when it finally found its foundation. And then it was a matter of trying to find somebody to edit it, which that was a whole journey in and of itself, just finding the right editor. And, finally, I was at a convention. I was at Multiverse in Atlanta, and someone asked me, they was like, well, Mocha Memoirs Press, their head person, Nicole, is here. Why don't you ask her if she'd be interested? And, it's funny because as a writer, you make friendships with people, and oftentimes you're nervous about asking them to do, hey, could you do me a favor, take a look at this, because you don't want to ruin the friendship that you have with someone. But I gambled on it. I gave it to them, and it took a while to get a response back, but eventually when they did respond, it was a resounding yes. We want to put this into publication.
That's great. Yeah. So. And I mean, Nicole is fantastic, and she's doing such great work with Mocha Memoirs Press, and it seems like the perfect home for Sinister Ascension.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I thought that too. I really did.
So without giving any spoilers, this book has just been out for a little while, but without giving us any spoilers, what makes Sinister Ascension different from a sort of standard vampire story?
Ooh, without giving any spoilers away. I did not want to write a conventional vampire story.
Okay.
I'll put it that way. I wanted to do, well, the thing is with vampires, as much as I've loved vampire lore, I started to feel like the vampires were becoming less Nosferatu and more kind of the everyday guy could possibly be the vampire. And I wanted to go back to the roots of what makes them terrifying.
Yeah.
And with this, I needed to come up with a reason other than the lovelorn vampire looking for someone. And so I sat down, I thought about it, and I said, okay, what if I gave him a reason? He needs a very specific reason. And it just came to me that, he's being bullied. And from that, because that's we've seen that before, but not to the point of how far this guy is willing to go to get his revenge on the bullies. And then everything else around that just kind of, so what makes it unique is that the vampire isn't out for blood. He's not there just to feed. He has a very specific reason why he's feeding the way he is and what he's trying to accomplish in the end, which I think makes it even more terrifying when you think about how meticulous he is.
So you put vampires into kind of a different social context.
Yeah.
And it's a very modern take. Also, it takes place in the present day, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Originally, it took place in like the early 90s and 2000s. But what I started to realize was there was it was hard to convince people because they're contained. It's contained on a college campus. So it was kind of hard to make that world believable in what I was trying to do. So I didn't have a problem moving it up to more modern time.
Okay. And as far as classic vampires go, have you seen the new Nosferatu yet?
I have.
Okay.
I have. I enjoyed it. I really did. In fact, I had watched the Werner Herzog film just days before, just to kind of prepare myself, because I really wasn't sure if this was going to be a remake of the original Nosferatu or this was going to be sort of a different type of story. But it is I love the acting. It was absolutely gorgeous to look at. And, you know, I don't have a big problem with the mustache. You know, I know that became the thing, but what's funny enough is that I would say when I first saw him, he reminded me of Boris Karloff in Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, yeah, that's a good point.
The vampire.
Yeah. And the mustache seems to have become the flashpoint for opinions on Nosferatu. We have one question coming in from the audience. This is from Nicholas Dyack, and I think you'll get the gist of this one.
Okay.
What's your favorite cut of beef, your favorite wine to drink, and the latest shenanigan that you're proud of?
Okay. Favorite cut of beef would be the filet mignon. Favorite wine to drink. I'm not a big red wine drinker, so I drink a lot of Pinot. And the latest shenanigan that I'm proud of. I'm trying to think of what shenanigan I got into most recently.
Well, publishing a new novel is a shenanigan. That's
yeah, you could call it. Wow, that's the hardest one to answer is what shenanigan have I gotten into? I think before the holiday I bought one too many Lego sets. And so snuck that in and was like, uh-oh.
And for those in the audience who are not in on Nicholas's play on words, Mark is a member of the Beef, Wine, and Shenanigans podcast crew, which is a terrific podcast. We've actually teamed up with your team on Galactic Terrors not too long ago, about almost a year ago, to do a special episode. And who else? Tell us just quickly about Beef, Wine, and Shenanigans.
It is a podcast. We call ourselves Blurds. So it's myself, Stephen Van Patten, Kirk Johnson, and Denise Tapscott. And we cover all things nerd from our perspective, anything new that has come out. And we will actually, from time to time, dip our toes into a little bit of politics, which looks like we're about to get ready to do that again. But that's the podcast. And we have a ton of fun on that podcast. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your reading, and congratulations on the publication of Sinister Ascension. And we'll have you back a little bit later to talk about some things maybe coming up down the road.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right. Our next reader is Matthew Kressel. Matthew is a multiple Nebula and World Fantasy Award nominated author and coder. His many works of short fiction have appeared in Analog, Asimov's, Lightspeed, Clark's World, Tor.com/Reactor, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, and many other publications and anthologies, including multiple years' bests. 18 of his stories will be included in his debut collection, Histories Within Us, coming from Census 5 Press in February. His far future novel, Space Trucker Jess, is coming in 2025 from Fairwood Press, and his Mars-based novella, The Rain Seekers, is forthcoming from Tor.com in early 2026. Alongside Ellen Datlow, he runs the Fantastic Fiction at KGB Reading Series in Manhattan, and he is the creator of the Moksha submissions system, used by many of the largest fiction publishers today. And you can find Matthew online at MatthewKressel.net. And welcome, Matthew.
folks. So tonight I'm going to be reading from my collection, Histories Within Us, that Jim just mentioned, specifically a story called Demon in Aisle 6. I'm going to read about the first half of it. This story originally appeared in Nightmare magazine. So if you want to hear how it ends, you could either get a copy of this. It's available for pre-order, or you could go to Nightmare magazine. So this is the first half of Demon in Aisle 6. I first saw the demon the Sunday after you died. It was 11:53 p.m., just 7 minutes until I would have grabbed my knapsack and biked home to Mom and bed and a life of sound sleep. That night, the flurries were drifting down like nuclear ash. Most folks had fled for warmer places, but a few shopper zombies still wandered Supermart's bright aisles, seeking redemption in the form of deep discounts. I was wheeling a mop and bucket down to aisle 17, where a crate of cherry soda had fallen from the shelf and sent high fructose fizz all over the concrete floor. When I passed aisle 6, the demon looked up at me. I felt as if a swarm of moths had hatched in my belly and were wriggling out of their cocoons to feast on my organs, as if someone's hand had clutched my heart and squeezed. It hurt so much I gagged, because there he stood, this giant ball of brown afterbirth, 8 feet tall, hunched and crooked, one eye white and huge like the moon on the night you died, the other eye this black drop of oil, a black hole sucking up all light. He was a pinwheel of jagged teeth and claws and bones like some aborted dinosaur fetus. And I didn't want to look. I was too afraid. But there he was, more there than anything I'd ever seen. And he stared at me, this nightmare fetus, eating candy. Shredded bags of Skittles and Starbursts and Tootsie Rolls lay over the floor like confetti after a parade. A strip of orange plastic hung from his disjointed mouth. I couldn't take it anymore, so I ran. I shoved the bucket down to aisle 17 and mopped up the sticky black puddle and pretended I'd never seen him, hoping he would go away and never come back. But that was stupid, because he made sure to keep coming back until I understood he was as real to me as you once were. I still have that selfie you took at Onderdonk Lake as the background pic on my phone. It hurts like hell every time I check the time or take a call, but it hurts even more when I think of removing it. It makes me remember your smile, your big, pouty red lips, your huge front teeth, my little Freddie Mercury. Do you remember when we first met outside school? It was the end of lunch period, and all the kids waited by the doors for the bell. I was talking to Deb and Jen, my new BFFs, puffing a smoke, trying real hard to make more friends, because to everyone else, I was that weird transfer kid from New York who pronounced coffee with a W, who dressed all in black like some, quote, goth heathen, who had to be shunned because he came from that place with too many, quote, tree-hugging liberal faggots. I only knew you as this shy boy who sat in the back of my physics class and made everyone look stupid with your perfect grades. I told this dumb joke and I heard this enormous laugh, as if the whole world was shuddering with joy. I turned and I saw you smile, and this sugary sweet feeling filled my heart, like my chest had become a giant balloon and I was floating way up above all the bullshit of the world, and all that was left was you, me, and endless blue skies. You asked me for a smoke. I said, I'm Lucas, and shook your warm, soft, but firm hand. Davis, you said, your eyes watering from the smoke, locked hard to mine. Later you told me you'd never smoked before, that you puked in the bathroom halfway through English class. We laughed a lot about that. We laughed about a lot of things. And when you died, I thought I'd never hear you laugh again. Now, I'm not so sure. The nightmares came like freight trains, loud and huge and terrifying. I'd wake up screaming, shivering with memories of vague, bloody shapes, limbs and teeth and bones all mixed together in a monster smoothie. Once I dreamed of you standing outside my bedroom door, your body open to me like those cutaway slices of earth in our physics textbooks. You stared at me and I wanted to say something, maybe goodbye or hello or just anything, but you turned and walked away. I woke gasping. I wondered what you were trying to say, if you had wanted me to follow you. And yeah, I considered following you many times. How could I not? I tried to convince myself I'd hallucinated the demon, but he was more full of life than all the shopper zombies wandering Supermart's bright aisles. I avoided aisle 6 as much as possible, afraid he'd come back. But he did. He had to. It was Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. I was tired and wanted to go home. Your Freddie Mercury smile stared up at me when I checked the time on my phone. I was restocking aisle 7. I didn't want to be so close to 6, but my boss had noticed that the shelves near 6 were getting sparse and sent me on a mission. I worked as fast as I could, but after 20 minutes, I decided my fears were stupid. I had to stop being a baby. I peeked into aisle 6 where this toddler sat in a big red shopping cart, kicking his legs while his mom rifled through huge bags of M&Ms. And as I look into the aisle, the kid says, "I don't like him, Mommy." And the mom says, "Be nice, Mikey. He's just doing his job." But then the kid says, "No, not him, Mommy. I don't like that one." He points over her shoulder to the end of the aisle where the shadows fall all wrong, as if the light got lost and confused before it hit the ground. The mother has her back to this, but I see it clearly. The kid starts howling, and the hairs on the back of my neck rise as the demon lopes into view like he is stepping through an invisible door. He's all white and glistening, with a new, crooked head and a mouth like a blowfish, thousands of long, sharp teeth and a honeycomb of cow's eyes, all dark and black and huge, all gazing at me. And yeah, he's different this time, but I know he's the same demon because the same colony of termites are eating my intestines. The same firm hand is wringing my heart. The mother doesn't dare look where the kid is pointing, but she must see the terror in my face because she says, "Por favor, espiritu, leave us be. We're shopping for his birthday." She crosses herself and shoves her kid and cart toward checkout like she's racing the Iditarod. But me, I can't move. I'm frozen with dread as the demon lopes over to the shelves and tears open a bag of Tootsie Rolls with his teeth. He swallows them whole, wrappers and all, while his lips smack wetly together. Gobs of black saliva drip to the floor and make these weird rainbows in the fluorescent lights. I feel a touch on my arm and I scream, but it's just this long bearded dude that smells like cigarettes and bourbon. And when I look back, the demon is gone, but he's left the shredded wrappers behind. The dude says, "Sorry to startle you, man. Coffee filters? Which aisle?" I asked you to tutor me, but I think you knew I was after more than grades. Mom works 2 jobs and I need to work 6 nights just so we can starve more efficiently. It's been like this since Fuckface left us for sexier pastures. Mom's almost never home, so I know you and I would be alone for hours. We did physics problems, motion, energy, momentum. I got frustrated and we stepped out into a gray and rainy autumn day that made me want to wear wool sweaters and drink soup and nap all afternoon until the sun set too soon. The leaves had just turned this luscious gold, and when I mentioned their color, you said, "The leaves don't actually change color. They're always golden or orange or red, but their colors are hidden under the green of chlorophyll. It's only when the chlorophyll breaks down in the fall that their natural color emerges." And I said, "Just like people, you only see their true colors when their defenses break down." And you said, "Yeah, but people's true colors aren't always beautiful." And that's when I knew you and I were each half of a greater being yet to form. We shared a cigarette. By then you smoked like Louis Jourdan, every puff an erotic display. Grace and angst danced blissfully across the micro expressions of your face. I wanted you so badly, I shuddered. You told me about your favorite books, to say nothing of The Dog and The Road and a writer named James Tiptree Jr., who was really a woman. You got excited about this TV show where this closeted doctor in a religious English town hid his desires for fear he might lose his thriving business if his patients knew he was gay. The conversation had to go this way, toward sex, toward desire, in the same way that water has to flow downhill to merge with other streams until it forms a gushing river. Hunger burned in your eyes as you gazed at me. Ancient glaciers melted in my body, flooding me with heat. I wanted to connect your universe to mine, so together we could birth galaxies. But the water hit a dam, pooled and stopped. You turned the conversation to your dad, a detective. He worked late nights, and you told me how he'd come home drunk and break things, and every now and then he'd try to break you. My heart broke a little too. I told you to report him because fuckers like him deserve to die, but you said you thought it would only make things worse. Without your dad, you had no one. Your mom died from breast cancer when you were 6. And I said, God, Davis, that must have been so hard to lose her so young. And you said, no, I haven't lost her. Life is energy, and energy can't be destroyed. I don't believe in death, Lucas. Mom's not gone. She's just traveling. Words more beautiful had never been spoken. I leaned in and you didn't stop me. Your hot tongue tasted like cigarettes, and all the pain I had been carrying, the anger about my dad leaving us to fend for ourselves, my frustration at all these ignorant kids in this podunk town who had no room in their cliques for a gay freak like me, all of that melted away into the flood of warmth radiating from my heart. I was a new star blazing. Life had brought me to this moment, and therefore life was beautiful. It was the first time you'd kissed a boy. It was the first time you'd kissed anyone. I'd kissed plenty of boys back in New York. In my public school in Manhattan, kids had 2 moms or 2 dads, or a black dad and a white mom, or a white dad and an Asian mom, or a Jewish mom and a Buddhist dad, or a Muslim dad and a Christian mom, or no dad, or no parents at all. And it was all one beautiful, glorious dancing spectrum of color. And no one cared because that's just how it was. But here in Podunkville, if a boy dares want another boy, you're Satan's spawn or a pedophile, or you sweat AIDS and exhale sin. And I'd absorbed all these disgusting words of hate in the 3 months that I'd lived here, in overheard snatches of conversations, in people's hard expressions and uncomfortable sighs, or more overt revelations shouted in the halls. But I kissed you anyway. You're shivering, Davis, I said. And you said, I feel like a leaf stripped of my outer covering. And I said, your true colors are beautiful. When Supermart's security guard went on one of his epic long breaks, I snuck into his office and queued up the surveillance tapes. I needed to know if I was losing my mind or if my demon was real. Maybe I'd see him, but I'd settle for hovering bags of candy, unnatural shadows, or really any damn scrap of evidence proving that I'd seen something or someone swallowing massive doses of high fructose corn syrup in aisle 6. It took some time to find the right tape. I queued it up, and there I stood on the blurry screen, this horrific blank stare on my face, jaw open, arms at my side, like some tranced kid at a stage hypnotist show, frozen by a magic word. There was no one else in the aisle with me. Eventually, this blank-eyed figure walks over to the shelves and opens a bag of Starburst with his teeth. After I'd watched myself shove a 3rd handful of still-wrapped candy into my mouth, I stopped the tape. And I'm going to stop there.
Wow. Matt, this is awesome. I mean, you've got this overarching, creepy horror kind of thing, but there's so many pieces of real life that you've grasped and, offered to us in this story. This is really delightful.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Nice and creepy too.
Yes. So this is part of your new collection that is coming out. And what else is in the collection? Are the stories all along the same lines? Is it a variety of different types of stories?
It's a variety. So there's 18 stories in here. So I mostly write science fiction, but there are a few horror tales in here. There's the thing in the refrigerator that can stop time, which is a horror story. It sounds science fictional, but it's actually a horror story. And then I have In Memory of a Summer's Day, which is like a creepy Alice in Wonderland story. That was in an Ellen Datlow anthology, Mad Hatters and March Hares.
Oh yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
basically a tour guide of Alice in Wonderland. Like it's a theme park, but it's actually the characters from Alice in Wonderland, and it's totally creepy. It's like I think it's sort of my riff on Disney. Like I think Disney's super creepy, and it's like
That was actually the first thing of yours that I read.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a good intro.
So yeah, it's mostly science fiction. Most of my stuff's in here is science fiction.
terrific. So I mean, you primarily write science fiction, but you like to hop genres now and then.
Yeah, so like I sort of started out writing all over the place. I think like a lot of spec fic authors do. So I have I've done fantasy stories. There's actually a couple fantasy stories in here too. Science fiction, horror. I have a horror story that's not in here called Will You Meet Me There Out Beyond the Bend? And it's basically about what would scare a ghost, right? So what would a ghost be scared of?
Yeah.
It's really dark. Like what the thing about when I write horror, I even sometimes my science fiction, it goes like really dark. It's like I'm like, oh man, I don't know where this comes from.
Yeah, but that's the cool part, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. How would you describe your your science fiction in general? Are you more of a hard science fiction writer, or?
No, so I got a couple blurbs for the book, and the kind of theme that I see from the blurbs and from Mercurio Rivera, who did the introduction, is like a lot of the stories are grounded in people and in humans. So it's like I like to have this backdrop of like an enormous sort of cosmic scope, but grounded in very real human characters and real human experience. Like a lot like this story. Like I didn't really.
That's what I was just saying. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
like I like to really focus in on the characters and the emotions, and then the spec fic backdrop provides a nice way to really explore that.
Now, what did you read when you were a kid? Were you reading science fiction then, or what was your?
Yeah, I read it. Like, so my dad sort of got me into it. He would bring home like books he got from the library. They used to like sell books for like a penny, so we'd come home with huge boxes of books. I had like a Lovecraft phase at one point, and like I was really naive, and I just thought like no one knew who Lovecraft was. Like I just thought it was just some obscure writer that, and then once I realized, I was like, what was I talking about? And like, you know, obviously Lovecraft has problems going back. You know, you read, you say, oh yeah, there's all this racist stuff. But like as a kid, I didn't pick that up. You know, I'm just reading these creepy stories. So I went through a Lovecraft phase. I went through, you know, a lot of science fiction, a little horror, you know, some Peter Straub, some King, of course, things like that. But yeah, mostly like sort of the golden silver age science fiction stuff.
Yeah,
Very cool.
that's very cool. Yeah.
So now you primarily have written or published at least short fiction. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have I have two novels that I published. They're dark fantasy novels, King of Shards and Queen of Static. They're two parts
series,
of trilogy. And then I have a far future science fiction novel, which you mentioned in my bio, Space Trucker Jess, coming out in June from Fairwood Press. And then a year from next month, I have a novella coming out from Tor.com called The Rain Seekers, which is takes place on Mars. It's about a group of people who are trying to be the first to experience rain on Mars, and it's told from the point of view of a reporter, essentially, who's interviewing them as they're traveling, chasing a rainstorm.
Cool. And do you feel more at home with one format or the other, short fiction versus long fiction or novel length work?
You know, it's weird. Like, so I think that with short fiction, there's more of feedback. It's like, it's a different form, obviously, but it's like you could write a short story, and you know, it usually takes me like a week or two to write a short story, and then I'll send it through like my writers group, first readers. So you get like quick feedback, and then, you know, if you sell the story, it usually, you know, will come out within a year. So it's like there's a really quick turnaround. Whereas like a novel, it's like you're so immersed in something, it could take years before it comes out. So like I said, I only have 2 novels out, and they were published several years ago. So I'm kind of getting back into the novels now. So I'm enjoying it. I love getting immersed in it. It's a different world for me. I mean, I love it. I love both formats. It's like I just actually turned in the novel to the publisher, so I'm like, dude, should I write a short story? I kind of want
a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sneak one in before the edits come back.
Yeah.
You could do it. Yeah.
Great.
This weekend. We want to see it by Monday, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I'm curious to ask you, you're, as we said in the intro, one of the hosts of the KGB, the Fantastic Fiction series there, and you've been doing that for quite a while. So what have you learned from doing that and interacting with all these different authors? You've had such astounding people coming in there.
So I would say that like most people are amazing. Like writers in general are just like, everybody's, you know, interesting, and I'm not just blowing smoke here. Like there's like everybody, like people come from all over. They have all these unique life experiences, and then, you know, you hear different people read their work, and they're like, I always get inspired. So, you know, usually after hearing 2 readings, I like come back and like, this is part of the reason why I want to write a short story. You know, I heard 2 really good readings last night, and I was like, yeah, like it just inspires me. And then also it's just like I'm really lucky that I get to meet all these authors, people. So it's like I don't go to that many conventions. I go to maybe 1 or 2 a year, but when I do, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I know that person because they read at KGB. We hosted them, so it's like it's a conversation that I can start up with people and say, how are you? What's going on? What's new? So like, that part of it is really great, just the interaction. And then the actual series itself is kind of like a salon. I mean, and as you know, who've been there, it's just like every month a bunch of writers and fans and professionals and non-professionals get together in this intimate setting for a couple hours and just talk about things that they love, and it's really great. And I'm just happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, I love just sitting at the table, and anybody who wants to can come up and sit in the other half of the table, and you know, meet all sorts of cool people. You know, it's a very cozy atmosphere. Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah.
So, and I put a link in the chat for anybody who's interested in learning more about the Fantastic Fiction Reading Series at KGB. So you have some great readers coming up in the next few months for anyone in our audience who's in the New York area, including one Carol Gyzander, who will be reading there this spring.
I'll be there in May, and Jim was just there this past fall. So that was a great reading right there.
And another one of our HWA NY crew, Clay McLeod Chapman, is coming up there too, I think, in a couple of months, right?
Next month, yeah.
You cannot beat a reading by Clay, you know.
No.
Simply can't. Just hold on to your chair. Yeah, that's terrific. So some of the other things that I love is that you know, hearing a story in the author's voice, they're reading it the way they think it should be read, And I love that, our show does that, yours and Elaine's, the godmother of horror and such. When I've heard the author read it, when I read their work again in the future, I hear it in their voice.
Yeah.
I just think it's really cool.
I can't read a Jeff Ford story without hearing Jeff reading it. I've heard him read so many times, and I just hear his voice whenever I read his work.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And same with Karen Hewler for some of her stories. That's really fun. So that's cool. I don't know.
All right. Well, Matthew, we've got to ask you. I don't know if you have seen the new Nosferatu yet or not.
No, I
formulated an opinion on the stash or.
That's funny. Not seen it yet, huh?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny when we get an image of something. It's like hearing the author's voice. We have an image of a past actor doing something, and that's defined it. Golly, and it makes me think of when my kids were little. The Lord of the Rings movies were coming out, and I wanted them to know the books before the movies. And so that's what started me reading aloud. I read the entire Hobbit and Lord of the Rings to my two kids, which took a while, and they're still talking to me, so that's a good sign. But I wanted them to at least experience the words before they saw somebody else's vision of what it looked like.
Yeah.
Wow,
they're talking to you because they feel like as long as they're talking, you won't start reading.
That could be. That's fair. That's fair.
Don't let her pick up the Silmarillion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Yeah. Were you a Lord of the Rings fan, Matt?
Yeah, I actually read it. I think for the first time in college. My roommate had it, and yeah, it was one of those things that I just kind of powered through. Once you start it, it's like that. I was
gotta keep going.
Classes and stuff. Just yeah.
Mm-hmm. I sent my college roommate a copy of Dune when she was doing her summer work in Africa in anthropology, and she says, "I'm never going to forgive you because I started it and I could do nothing for the next 24 whatever hours." She just read the entire thing. So
I actually read Dune in a single sitting.
That's pretty much what she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Let's get some more folks on and we can talk about what's coming up next.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's.
Thank you for sharing your words, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew.
Thanks for having me.
And Mark. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you again for sharing your stories with us. And I think we got some insight into how people feel about the mustache in Nosferatu. But Elaine, you kind of set another path. I want to know who is everyone's favorite Skarsgård. You mentioned Bill is yours, Elaine.
Yes.
All right. I don't know. Does anyone else have a favorite Skarsgård? Mark, Matthew?
I suck at names, so I have no comment.
Wait, remind
Bill.
Remind me of the different Skarsgård. I think I know who they are, but I'm just I'm very visual, so I'm there's
Stellan. I think that's my favorite, the father.
Stellan.
The original Skarsgård. He was in a lot. He's been in so much stuff. Yeah.
Wait, was Stellan is he in Andor?
Oh, he might be. I haven't watched Andor.
He is.
Mark, he is.
Yeah, I think he's in Andor. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
So it's not. It's a toss up between Bill and the other brother who is on True Blood.
Alexander.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a toss up between the two of them. I think Bill does some phenomenal work with horror, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's kind of Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
He was when I read it as a kid, there was a very particular voice I heard in my head, which is why I'm not a big fan of the television series that came on with I'm forgetting names tonight.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. I didn't hate it, but I was just like, that's not Pennywise. When Bill opened his mouth and started talking, I went right back to that kid that I was like, that's him. That's the Pennywise I know. He's like, I never saw him as this kind of, I know he was a clown, but he didn't, in my mind, was much darker than what they first portrayed him as. So it's a toss-up between the brothers.
All right.
Cool.
Well, sorry, my apologies for the diversion. I just thought it was an interesting.
Can I cause another diversion? I feel very, very guilty. I was asked about the Anne Rice anthology, and I failed to mention the most important part about that anthology, and that is that it's a charity anthology.
Oh.
So none of the writers received any money. The editors, the cover artist, and the cover's gorgeous. The charity is for the Animal Rescue of New Orleans, or Arno. All money goes to the puppies and kitties, and will forever always go to them. So I feel horrible that I failed to mention. I was so busy rambling on about Gothic literature that
you were on this. We put you on the spot, so we did. So so thanks for sharing that. That's always terrific.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
And so Elaine, what do you have coming up on the radar that people should be looking out for?
Okay, 2025 is going to be good. I have a novel coming out from Trepidatio. They're part of Journal Stone Publishing that should come out in the spring, tentatively March 31st, but these things can shift and change. Then an anthology that I edited will be coming out in the fall from 34 Orchard Press. And then I have two other projects, and I don't mean to sound precious when I say this, but I've been sworn to secrecy. And then by the publisher, we can't reveal anything yet because they are kind of unique projects. Cool. But if you follow my newsletter or follow me on social media, I'm sure at some point I will be allowed to speak about them publicly. So I'm excited.
Yes.
There's some good things coming up.
Well, that's perfectly fair. It's exciting to know something's coming, and we did put the link for your newsletter right up in the chat, so people can find it there. Yeah. And the books that everybody read tonight, we put those in the chat as well. So yeah. Mark, how about you? What's coming up for you? I mean, this has just come out.
So I've been busy promoting Sinister Ascension. I will be at the Long Island Horror Convention with copies. So if people can make their way out there, I'll be there for that. I don't have. I'm working on different things. I just finished a screenplay not too long ago for a friend of mine who does films. That they're I think it's going to be, this project may be happening later on in the year. And outside of that, I have been organizing my notes for the sequel to Sinister Ascension. Ooh. And I'm trying to finish up a small, it's going to be a novella, because why not? Called What Happened to Jack, which are 3 horror stories about what might have happened to Jack the Ripper to keep him stopped him from murdering people. So they're characters from the actual Penny Dreadfuls that he runs into that have basically taken him out. But each story is a little bit different as to exactly how they got their hands on him.
Ooh, cool.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice hook. Yeah.
Excellent.
Huh. I just have to ask, you've got Sinister Ascension. I can just picture what you're going to do for the title. Is it something like Nefarious Declension? I don't know.
Actually, this is what I can say. The title I came up is, it's going to be Sinister Shift, and her main protagonist will be a werewolf.
Ooh. I mean, so. Oh, that's going to be cool. Yeah. Neat. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's great characters in it. I loved it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right. And Matthew, I think you have quite a bit coming up on the horizon.
Yeah.
This 25 is going to have a few things coming out. So next month I have a short story coming out. It's a reprint. The short story is called White Roses in Their Eyes. It's an alternate history, Anne Frank. And it's in an anthology called And One Day We Will Die, stories inspired by the music of Neutral Milk Hotel.
Oh, yeah.
So, John Langan and Brian Evanson are in it. So it's I haven't read it yet, but looking forward to that. I'm a big Neutral Milk Hotel fan. And then this book, obviously, which I mentioned in February.
Yeah.
My novel, Space Trucker Jess, is in June. Real quick elevator pitch. It's 16-year-old foul-mouthed grifter girl and her father. They're grifting their way across the galaxy. The father gets arrested, thrown in jail. She's forced to become a roach runner, basically repairing starships to make a living because her dad's in jail. And one night she goes to look for him in jail, and turns out he's gone, he's missing. And she ends up going on an odyssey across the galaxy trying to find him, and it involves alien gods, missing planets, and cosmic hijinks. And the even shorter elevator pitch is if Natasha Lyonne were narrating 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Sounds awesome.
I heard you read a clip, a bit from that. Where was it, ReaderCon or somewhere? And she is a feisty girl. Yeah,
she is feisty. Oh, it might have been at ReaderCon. Yeah, I think I read the first chapter, and then in October I have a short story coming out in Reactor called Model Collapse, which is a really dark science fiction story, possibly horror, depending on your point of view. And then, like I said, I have. In February of 26, a novella from Tor.com called The Rain Seekers. And it's the story is there's a young woman who is a former influencer who got tired of that life and is hired by a Martian magazine to document the adventure of a group of pilgrims hoping to be the first people to experience rain on Mars. They've been terraforming Mars. So they go out across the Martian plains, which are very dangerous, and they're tracking a rainstorm. And meanwhile, she's interviewing them, and it's a very humanist story, I guess. So yeah, that's what's coming up.
That's great. Cool. I have to admit, I was really surprised when I heard about I'm sorry, I missed the title again, but the Neutral Milk Hotel.
Yeah, and One Day We Will Die.
One Day We Will Die. I've known that band and listened to them, but I didn't realize they were popular enough to inspire an anthology.
I think they have a whole following for sure. Yeah, they have a huge following.
So that's terrific.
Cool.
And Carol, we have some stuff coming up here on Galactic Terrors.
Yes, we do. We've got a special reading coming up later this month, not on the second Thursday. Please, everybody, join us at 8:00 on Monday, January 27th. We have HWA New York author Teal James Glenn, who's the author of Not Born of Woman, and MWA New York author Jeff Markowitz, who's the author of The Other. And Teal's novel follows Adam Paradise, who's actually Frankenstein's creation. He's now working as a private investigator in 1933 New York City. He helps a Romani woman retrieve a family artifact being used by the Nazis for nefarious purposes. And now Jeff's work, The Other, is a dual timeline historical about Nazi activity in New Jersey in the 1930s and about a resurgence of Nazi activity in America today. It's a story of faith lost and faith found. And we're also excited to share that author Deborah Every from our New York chapter is joining us as guest co-host that night. So please tune in on Monday the 27th this month. It'll be fun. Then we've got we've got our next event coming up in person is Sunday, February 9th in the West Village. We're going to be at Shade Bar to do a fun night of Broken Hearts Horror. Think of heartfelt readings to celebrate Valentine's Day. And we can put a link in the chat for Facebook group for those who are in the New York City area. You can find more details about it. And our next Galactic Terrors reading is Thursday, February 13th. We've got Rebecca Cuthbert, Charles Baruch, and New Yorker David Mercurio. So looking forward to all of those. And one more, if I may just throw out a ridiculous list of dates in the interest of time. Yeah. We're doing another special event next month for my new anthology called Dark Spores. It's mushroom horror, and it's spreading to a location near you. So looking forward to that.
All the more reason to sign up for our newsletter.
Exactly. True.
Keep track of all these crazy events we're putting together.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So cool. How about you, Jim? What are you up to?
I think I'm doing some of those events, and we'll be at
Yes.
the Long Island Convention of Horror at the end of February. Writing wise, I don't really have anything to announce at the moment. I am not, like Elaine, sworn to secrecy, but it is a little too soon to share anything.
Or Matt? Yeah.
In the coming months, I'm sure I'll have some good information to announce.
Yes. Oh, that'll be exciting. Yeah. And my biggest announcement is that Dark Spores is just released, and it's wonderful. And I very cleverly have a box of books in the other room, so I'm not going to get one. That would be silly. But that's pretty exciting.
Well, before we wrap up, I did want to just come back to Elaine quickly. You mentioned you had issues with the mustache in Nosferatu, but we didn't really get. I'm obsessed with.
I started a thing here. Yeah.
I'm not a mustache fan. Even as a young child, I had one uncle with a mustache, so I never wanted to hug or kiss him. I know, I'm not a fan. So, but I know that I'm a Dracula purist, and I know that in Dracula he had a mustache, so I can't argue too heartily against it.
Yeah, I didn't mind the mustache so much, but I did miss the teeth. I missed the Nosferatu teeth.
But
so
speaking
sorry,
of voice,
sorry
his
if it's,
voice was
spoilery.
his voice
Yeah.
was crazy in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is what is burning on the minds of horror writers everywhere this month is Nosferatu, mustache or no mustache.
Cool. Well, we'll have to report. We'll have to check in again next month and see if more people have seen it. So I have not yet. Great. Well, thanks so much, everybody. This is so much fun hearing your words. Like we said, I love hearing the author's words in their own voice. So very cool.
This has been great. Thank you. Congratulations on all the projects and new projects coming up to all of you. And thank you to our audience for joining us for the readings and sharing your questions for the authors. And we hope you'll be back next month for the next Galactic Terror. Well, actually, before the end of the month, we hope you'll be back
at the end of the month.
Weeks for a special episode, and then next month for our upcoming regular transmission, and then the additional special transmission. I don't know, we're making a lot of work for ourselves.
Well, if all of our authors would stop writing such cool books, it'd be easier. But no, I don't want that to happen. So
no.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.